You ever wake up ready to crush a Monday, only to discover that your private property suddenly got rebranded by the local HOA as their personal parking garage? Yeah, imagine walking outside and finding strangers' cars camped out in your reserved spaces like it's a pop-up car dealership. And when you try to stop it, the HOA queen pin acts like you're the unreasonable one. Well, buckle in, because today on HOA Wars, we're diving into one of the wildest neighborhood battles you'll ever hear. HOA let members park in my company property. I told everyone from my property. And to make it extra juicy, we've broken it down into 10 unbelievable facts that prove sometimes the best revenge is powered by hydraulics and a tow truck. Let's go. You know how some stories start with fireworks, drama, or maybe even a scandal that changes lives forever? Well, this one kicks off with a silver Lexus. Yep, not a sword fight, not a courtroom revelation, but a shiny luxury car squatting in a spot it had no business occupying. And honestly, that's how you know you're about to hear an HOA story. The drama is always parked on 4 wheels with an expired registration sticker. So picture this. Our main guy, the proud owner of a web design business, rolls into his office lot on a Monday morning. He's ready to tackle the week, armed with caffeine, deadlines, and probably a playlist that screams, "I'm a professional adult." But instead of sliding into his reserved space like the boss he is, he nearly rear-ends a Lexus, lounging there like it owns the place. Not just one car, mind you, but 3 of them. 3 strange vehicles camped out in his company's private lot, blocking his team and his clients before the day has even begun. Now, let's be real. Finding your space stolen is already rage-inducing. But when it's your business property, the lot you literally pay taxes and upkeep on, is not just annoying, it's personal. It's like someone breaking into your fridge and eating the sandwich you made for lunch and then acting like they're doing you a favor by taste testing it. Except instead of a sandwich, it's thousands of dollars in client appointments that risk getting flushed down the drain. He does what any of us would do, circles the lot twice, like maybe, just maybe, he imagined it the first time. Spoiler, the Lexus didn't magically sprout wings and fly away. The cars were still there, bold as brass. So he does the walk of shame, parks on the street, feeds a meter, and already knows this Monday is shaping up to be a stress test. Inside the office, the chaos is already brewing. His office manager, Tanya, is fuming. Co-workers Jason and Mia are circling the block like it's a NASCAR track, and clients are starting to grumble about the lack of parking. And here's the kicker. This is not a mall with endless rows of asphalt. This is a small business lot where every single space counts like it's oxygen. No parking, no clients. No clients, no money. And guess what? No money means bye-bye business. So our guy is staring out his office window, steaming, and finally notices a sign. Evergreen Property Management. Interesting. A quick phone call later, and boom, mystery solved. Except it's the kind of solved that makes your blood boil even hotter. The management company calmly explains, like it's no big deal, that the HOA from the neighboring community decided to borrow his lot while their visitor parking was under construction. Let me repeat that. The HOA, the neighborhood association with 0 ownership over his land, just announced to their residents, "Yeah, go ahead and park there. It's fine. Don't worry, the guy who actually owns the lot won't mind." The audacity is Olympic level. It's like me telling my friends they can crash at your house this weekend without even asking you. "Oh, don't worry, you'll love having company. Don't mind the mess or the fact that your fridge is empty now. Totally fine." And to really rub salt in the wound, the management property adds that according to the HOA's notes, the president, a woman named Margaret Wilson, claimed she had an arrangement with the business owner. Now, if you're thinking, wait, isn't the business owner the guy whose car almost got crunched by a Lexus this morning? Congratulations, you're paying more attention than Margaret ever did. He is the business owner, and no, there is no arrangement. The only arrangement here is between Margaret's imagination and her ability to lie with confidence. So let's recap. One man, one Lexus, two freeloading friends of the Lexus, and an HOA president who thinks she has diplomatic immunity when it comes to asphalt. All this before 9 a.m. on a Monday. And here's the thing, it might have ended there. He could have sighed, slapped a few angry post-it notes on windshields, and hoped it would resolve itself. But this wasn't just a random inconvenience. This was the first domino in what would turn into a parking war of epic proportions. A saga of deception, manipulation, late-night record checks, tow trucks, angry mobs in pajamas, and the eventual downfall of Margaret "I own all asphalt" Wilson. So yeah, Lexus may not sound like much, but in this story, it's the villain's opening act. And if you thought one car was bad, wait till you see what happens when Margaret's lie turns into a flood of vehicles clogging every single space. Because 3 cars are annoying, sure, but what happens when the HOA president pulls out her favorite party trick, lying straight to your face? Buckle up, fact number 2 is where the agreement from Fantasyland enters the chat.
Every great villain has a signature move. For Darth Vader, it was the Force choke. For Thanos, it was snapping his fingers. And for Margaret Wilson, the Queen Bee HOA president of Pinecrest Gardens, it was lying so confidently that you almost wondered if she believed herself. Spoiler, she probably did. So after our business owner discovers that his company lot has been transformed into HOA Disneyland, he does what any rational human would do. He calls the property management company Evergreen. And you know what they say in that calm, scripted voice? Oh yeah, that would be Pinecrest Gardens. They're repaving their visitor lot, so the HOA board told residents they could just park in yours temporarily. Excuse me? Temporarily? As in, we'll just help ourselves, like your property is the neighborhood buffet line? But wait, it gets better. When our guy asks how this is even remotely okay, the property manager adds, "Oh, well, according to our notes, HOA President Margaret Wilson said she had an arrangement with the business owner." Ah, yes, the mysterious arrangement. You know, the one the actual business owner never signed, never heard of, and definitely never approved? That one. Let's pause here, because this is the HOA Strategy 101 playbook. When in doubt, invent paperwork. Can't win an argument? Claim there's a rule. Don't have a rule? Say it's a long-standing tradition. Don't have a tradition? Say there's an arrangement. Margaret went straight for the last one, as if arrangement was her magical get-out-of-jail-free card. The business owner, stunned, reminds Evergreen that he is, brace yourself, the actual business owner. You could practically hear the property manager typing nervously, realizing that Margaret's arrangement might be more fictional than a Harry Potter sequel. But the damage was already done. Margaret had told her residents a big, bold, confident lie. She said, "Yes, we worked it out. It's all good. Park there, don't worry." And the residents believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was the HOA president, the almighty guardian of the bylaws, the self-proclaimed defender of parking justice. If Margaret said it, it must be true. Right? Wrong. And here's the thing about lies. They spread faster than wildfire, but unravel quicker than a cheap sweater when you tug at the first loose thread. The arrangement lie was the first loose thread. And this lie wasn't harmless. This wasn't telling your kid the ice cream truck only plays music when it's out of ice cream. This lie had consequences, financial ones. By day's end, employees were circling like vultures for parking, clients were getting ticketed for expired meters, and our business owner had to reimburse nearly $200 out of his own pocket just to keep his staff from staging a workplace mutiny. Imagine burning money because your neighbor's HOA president thinks your asphalt is a community playground. But here's where Margaret's lie really shines in its villainy. It wasn't just about the cars. It was about power. She wanted to act like her HOA's problems were automatically everyone else's problems. Visitor parking under construction? Just take the business lot next door. After all, Margaret said it was fine, and what Margaret says goes. Except not this time, because unlike most neighbors who probably sighed and let it slide, our business owner wasn't about to bow to the HOA queen. He started digging, and let me tell you, nothing terrifies a liar more than someone who actually checks the receipts. Still, let's give Margaret some credit. She played her role with Oscar-worthy confidence. She strutted around telling people there was an agreement, threw in some hand-waving about the previous owner, and acted like it was all official. And the residents ate it up like free samples at Costco. But the funniest part? Margaret wasn't just lying to her residents, she was lying to herself. Because when push comes to shove, paperwork doesn't lie. Property deeds don't lie. And county records definitely don't lie. The only liar in this story was Margaret Wilson, and the countdown had already started on her little HOA empire. So, let's recap fact number 2. The HOA president, without asking permission, without signing anything, without so much as a courtesy knock on the business owner's door, told her residents to park in his lot. And when pressed, she claimed there was an arrangement. A lie so bold it could have been printed on an HOA bumper sticker. Trust me, I made a deal. And if you think a bold-faced lie is bad, just wait until you hear how the HOA residents doubled down on that lie. Not with lawyers, not with contracts, but with handwritten notes. Yep. Welcome to fact number 3, otherwise known as the crumpled note saga.
So by this point, our business owner has already had a Monday from hell. Strange cars in his private lot. Employees circling the block like they're auditioning for a Fast and Furious 12 office parking drift, and clients bailing faster than a bad Tinder date. But he thinks, all right, let's be civil, let's be polite. Maybe these people just don't realize they're trespassing. Enter the windshield notes. He spends his precious time printing out polite little reminders, emphasis on polite. These aren't angry, all caps, I'll have you towed notes. No, these are corporate-friendly, HR-approved little love letters that say, this is private property for XYZ Design employees only. Please find alternative parking. Thank you for understanding. In other words, he gave them the kindergarten version of, get out of my lot. He places them carefully under each windshield wiper, probably thinking he's killing them with kindness. Maybe the residents will realize the mistake, feel a little sheepish, and move their shiny cars elsewhere. Maybe this story ends here, with a handshake, a chuckle, and a lesson in communication. Ha ha ha, no. The next morning, instead of gratitude or even compliance, our guy finds something else. 7 cars in the lot, not 3 anymore, 7. And just to twist the knife, his carefully worded notes are balled up and tossed onto the pavement like yesterday's trash. But wait, it gets even better. On one car, taped under the wiper like it was some kind of official document, was a handwritten response. Not typed, not signed, just scribbled with the smugness only an HOA resident could muster. The HOA said this is okay. Pause. Let's break that down. Imagine parking on private property, finding a note that politely says, please don't, and instead of respecting it, you take out a pen, channel your inner rebellious 8-year-old, and basically write, my mom said I could. That's what this note was. A glorified permission slip from Margaret Arrangement Wilson, as if her blessing magically overrode property deeds and county laws. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just one rogue resident being cheeky. No, no, no. This was clearly the HOA president's narrative in action. Margaret told her people it was fine. They believed her. So much so that one of them thought the ultimate clapback to a property owner's sign was Sharpie graffiti. Our business owner must have been standing in the lot staring at that note, wondering if he was being pranked, like Ashton Kutcher is about to pop out and yell, "You've been punked!" Because who does this? Who crumples a respectful request and doubles down with a handwritten permission slip from the HOA fairy godmother? But the message was clear. Politeness wasn't gonna cut it. He tried nice, they responded with entitlement. And entitlement, my friends, doesn't back down when you ask nicely. It digs in, it multiplies, it rolls in 7 deep and tosses your signs on the ground for sport. And let's not forget the ripple effects. That day, his employees racked up parking tickets again. He's out another chunk of change reimbursing them. Clients are irritated, productivity tanks. His blood pressure, off the charts. All because Margaret thought arrangement was code for occupy thy neighbor's lot. But oh, don't worry, this story doesn't stop at crumpled notes. Because right around the corner, our business owner decides to go straight to the source, Margaret herself. And spoiler alert, she doesn't exactly greet him with cookies and neighborly warmth. Because if you've got crumpled notes were petty, just wait until the HOA president herself enters the scene with designer sunglasses, fake smiles, and enough entitlement to power an entire gated community. Fact number 4 is where the Queen of Asphalt makes her grand debut.
Every HOA horror story has its villain. Sometimes it's the neighbor who fines you for your grass being half an inch too tall. Sometimes it's the guy who weaponizes the bylaws to declare war on Christmas lights. But in this saga, the crown belongs to one person and one person only, Margaret Wilson, president of Pinecrest Gardens HOA and self-proclaimed empress of community rights. So after dealing with crumpled notes, Sharpie permission slips, and an ever-growing army of cars, our business owner decides it's time to cut through the nonsense and go straight to the source. He schedules a meeting with Margaret at the HOA clubhouse, neutral ground, or so he thinks. But what he walks into is less neutral and more like stepping onto the set of The Devil Wears Prada HOA edition. There she is, exactly as you'd picture her, mid-50s, perfectly styled blonde highlights that scream $300 salon visit, designer outfit polished enough to reflect stadium lighting, a smile plastered across her face that technically qualifies as a smile but radiates the warmth of a tax audit. She motions him to sit, like a queen granting audience to a peasant. And then, with all the smug confidence of someone who's been watching his parking lot like it's live reality TV, Margaret leans in and says, "I understand there's some confusion about parking." "Excuse me? Confusion? Ma'am, the only confusion here is how you think you own asphalt you've never paid a dime for." But Margaret doesn't do apologies. She does spin. She explains that the community's visitor parking is under construction and, poor them, they had nowhere else to go. Naturally, she decided his lot was the perfect temporary solution. After all, we're neighbors. Cue the fake sweetness dripping off every syllable like pancake syrup that's 2 weeks past its expiration date. Our business owner pushes back. He explains politely but firmly that this is private property. He has employees. He has clients. He literally runs a business here. His lot isn't a charity case for HOA overflow. Margaret tilts her head, smiles wider, and counters with the kind of line only an HOA president could utter with a straight face. "Surely you can accommodate us temporarily. We're neighbors, after all." Translation, your needs are optional. Mine are sacred. And here's the part that really cranks up the creep factor. She admits that her board has been watching his lot. Yes, watching, like neighborhood spies peeking out from behind manicured hedges, clipboard in hand. They decided he wasn't fully using his spaces, so why not take them? Because, of course, private property is apparently subject to Margaret's HOA inventory audits. The business owner is understandably rattled. But Margaret isn't done. She pulls out her trump card. The previous owner allowed us to use the lot occasionally. We're simply continuing that arrangement. Ah, yes, the mystical arrangement makes another appearance, resurrected like a bad sequel. When pressed for proof, Margaret waves some papers around like they're magic scrolls, but shocker, she can't actually produce anything concrete. Still, she plays the part like she's already won. And eventually, under pressure and trying to be reasonable, the business owner agrees to a compromise. 5 spaces. For 1 week. That's it. No more. He documents it in writing and emails it to her immediately. Because if there's one thing you learn fast in HOA Wars, it's this. If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Margaret beams like she just closed the real estate deal on the moon. She assures him she'll tell her residents. She oozes gratitude and leaves him with that fake friendly vibe that says, "Thank you for bending. I'll be back to break you later." And the business owner? He leaves uneasy because deep down, he knows what we know. Margaret doesn't play by rules. She makes them up as she goes along. And this 1 week, 5-spot compromise? Yeah, that's about to get stomped on harder than your grass when the HOA inspector comes by with a ruler. Because if you thought Margaret's fake smiles and imaginary agreements were bad, just wait until you see what happens when our business owner actually checks the records. Spoiler, Margaret's arrangement falls apart faster than a folding chair at a family reunion. Welcome to fact number 5, the agreement that never was.
Here's the thing about HOA presidents like Margaret. They thrive on smoke and mirrors. Half of their power isn't in what's written down, it's in what they claim is written down. And Margaret, she claimed there was an agreement, a big, bold, supposedly legitimate parking agreement between the HOA and the business lot's owner. Sounds official, right? Except for one tiny problem. It didn't exist. Not in writing, not in spirit, not even in Margaret's bottomless file cabinet of imaginary paperwork. So let's rewind. After that awkward clubhouse sit-down where Margaret basically Jedi mind-tricked our business owner into giving up 5 spaces for a week, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling. Something smelled off. And it wasn't the HOA clubhouse coffee that had been burning in the pot since 1998. It was Margaret's confidence. The way she said, "continuing the arrangement," with her whole chest, like she was reading off a legal contract carved in stone. So what does he do? He does what Margaret never expected. He goes digging. Step 1, county records. He hops online, punches in the property address, and pulls up every easement, every deed, every plat map. And guess what? Not a single mention of Pinecrest Gardens. No easement, no shared use agreement, no nothing. His lot was as clean and unencumbered as a brand new driveway. Step 2, the previous owner. Remember, Margaret claimed this arrangement had existed for years. So our business owner picks up the phone and tracks down the guy who sold him the property, a retired gentleman living his best life in Florida, probably sipping pina coladas and golfing at 10 a.m. He explains the situation, expecting maybe some detail Margaret twisted. The old owner's response: laughter. Honest-to-God, belly-aching laughter. What arrangement? Son, the only arrangement I ever had with that HOA was telling them to pound sand when they tried this exact stunt 10 years ago. Boom. Case closed. Not only was there no agreement, but Margaret had actually recycled a failed HOA scam from a decade earlier. She wasn't even original in her deception. She just dusted off an old lie and tried it on the new guy, hoping he'd be too busy to fact-check. But here's where it gets truly ridiculous. When our business owner confronts her with the truth, county records, retired owner's testimony, the whole 9 yards, Margaret doesn't back down. Oh no, backing down isn't in her vocabulary. She doubles down. She insists there was an agreement, but it wasn't formalized, a handshake deal. Now let's pause for a reality check. A handshake deal over parking rights on private commercial property? That's not how any of this works. You don't just wander over to a small business and say, "Hey, we're going to need 10 of your spaces indefinitely. Cool?" And then shake hands like you've traded baseball cards. But Margaret clings to that excuse like it's her HOA-issued security blanket. Our business owner isn't buying it. He knows better. In fact, he knows that even if there had been some handshake deal in the past, it died the second the property changed hands. Contracts don't transfer magically just because Margaret thinks they should. If anything, her argument is as sturdy as a lawn chair in a hurricane. So now he's armed with proof. No agreement on file, no past owner backing it up,
Nothing but Margaret's word, and her word at this point is about as trustworthy as a Craigslist ad for a gently used jet ski. And here's the beauty of it. The more Margaret insists this phantom agreement exists, the more credibility she loses. The HOA board starts side-eyeing her, residents begin to murmur, and our business owner, he realizes he has the upper hand. Finally. For once, he's not just reacting to Margaret's lies, he's holding the receipts. This is the turning point. Up until now, Margaret has been the puppet master, yanking strings, spinning lies, making residents believe they have divine parking rights. But now, the strings are fraying, and the puppet show is about to collapse. Because once you expose a lie, you've got two choices: let it slide or go nuclear. And when it comes to private parking wars, nothing says nuclear than fresh signs and tow trucks on standby. Which brings us to fact number 6, the towing ultimatum.
Up until now, our business owner has been trying the polite route. He left notes, he had meetings, he even agreed to a short-term compromise with the HOA queen herself, Margaret Wilson. But after the phantom agreement was exposed as the fairy tale it was, he knew it was time to stop playing checkers and start playing chess. And in parking wars, the queen piece isn't Margaret, it's the tow truck. So here's what he does. He calls up a local towing company. Not some rinky-dink guy with a pickup truck and a chain. We're talking full-on, licensed, bonded, insured, ready-to-roll tow trucks that eat illegally parked cars for breakfast. He explains the situation, shows him his property deed, and lays out his plan. The tow operator nods like he's heard this 100 times before. Because let's face it, HOAs pulling stunts like this aren't exactly rare. Then comes the signage. Big, bold metal signs that read like the 10 Commandments of asphalt. Private property. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. They go up at every entrance, every corner, every space where Margaret's minions might try to claim ignorance. You'd have to be blind or willfully stupid not to notice them, which, let's be real, describes about 80% of HOA residents in stories like these. And then, the ultimatum. He fires off an email to Margaret and the HOA board, short, sweet, and devastatingly clear. Starting Wednesday, all unauthorized vehicles will be towed immediately. Boom. No loopholes, no wiggle room, no arrangements. Just a line in the sand, backed by tow hooks and hydraulic lifts. Now, if Margaret had any sense, she'd have taken that as her cue to back down. Maybe rally her residents, apologize for the misunderstanding, and gracefully retreat. But Margaret, sense is not her strong suit. Drama is. She storms into his office like she owns the place, her designer heels clicking on the tile like gunshots. She points at him with all the fury of an HOA president whose power trip is being revoked. And she drops her big, scary threat, "I'm on the City Planning Commission. I can make life very difficult for you." Ah, yes, the classic HOA flex. When in doubt, pull out a meaningless title and pretend that gives you superpowers. She might as well have said, "I'll tell Santa not to bring you presents this year for all the weight it carried." Our business owner doesn't flinch. He knows that planning commissions deal with zoning ordinances, not private parking disputes. Margaret might have thought she was wielding Thor's hammer, but in reality, she was waving around a pool noodle. So he stays calm. He reiterates the ultimatum. Unauthorized cars will be towed. Period. End of discussion. Margaret sputters, threatens, pouts, and finally storms out, probably muttering something about how he'll regret this. But we already know who's about to regret everything, don't we? Now here's the thing about ultimatums. They're only as strong as your willingness to enforce them. If Wednesday rolled around and nothing happened, Margaret would win. The residents would keep parking, the lot would stay full, and our guy would look like the boy who cried tow truck. But he wasn't bluffing. Oh no.
Behind the scenes, he had the tow company on standby. Engines warmed up, straps ready, paperwork filed. The cavalry was waiting, and the residents had no idea what was about to hit them. So let's set the stage. It's Tuesday night. Margaret probably reassures her residents, telling them the business owner won't actually follow through. She says she's bluffing. He'll never risk the bad publicity. Meanwhile, our guy is sleeping like a baby, dreaming of tow trucks lifting Lexuses into the air. And when the sun rises on Wednesday morning, that's when the HOA learns the hard way that ultimatums aren't threats, they're promises. Because when you tell people their cars will be towed and they don't believe you, well, that's when the tow trucks roll in like Avengers assembling. Welcome to fact number 7. Tow truck justice, dawn of parking wars.
Wednesday morning, the day of reckoning. If this story were a movie, this would be the slow-motion montage moment. Dramatic music swelling, tow trucks idling like horses before a cavalry charge, and HOA residents blissfully unaware that their cars are about to star in Fast and Furious Repo Edition. At exactly 9 a.m., the first tow truck rolls into the lot. Big, shiny, intimidating. The kind of vehicle that doesn't knock on your door, it knocks on your pride. Behind it, a second truck, just as ready to feast. These guys don't mess around. They're professionals. And today, business is booming. The first victim? You guessed it, that smug silver Lexus, the same one that kicked this whole saga off. The tow operator hooks it up with the precision of a surgeon, and within minutes, the car is lifted, tilted, and rolling out of the lot. If karma had a soundtrack, this was it, the rhythmic beep, beep, beep of a tow truck backing out. Now, imagine being one of the HOA residents peeking out your window, robe half-tied, coffee cup in hand, only to see your neighbor's luxury car dangling in the air like a prize claw machine win. Panic spreads faster than gossip at a PTA meeting. Phones start ringing. Margaret's phone probably explodes. And the tow trucks? They don't care. They just keep going. Car after car disappears. A black BMW, a cherry red Jeep, a beat-up Honda Civic that looked like it was held together with duct tape and hope. The trucks show no mercy. 12 cars gone in under 45 minutes. 12. That's not towing. That's a clean sweep. That's Thanos snapping his fingers, but instead of dusting people, it's repossessing their ride to work. And oh, the drama. Residents rush out, shouting, waving their arms like they can stop industrial hydraulics with sheer indignation. One woman actually clutches her pearls, yes, real pearls, and demands the tow driver unhook her car immediately. The driver, unfazed, points to the sign and says, "Private property, call this number." Boom. Done. She might as well have been yelling at a brick wall. Meanwhile, our business owner is inside his office, sipping coffee like a king surveying his kingdom. His employees cheer. Clients walk in and actually find open spaces. Productivity skyrockets. For the first time in weeks, the lot belongs to him again. And all it took was a tow truck parade. But let's talk about Margaret, because you know she wasn't going to sit quietly while her little asphalt empire crumbled. No, she storms into the lot mid-operation, hair perfectly sprayed, heels clicking like gunfire on concrete. She's shouting about agreements, about being neighbors, about how he's destroying the community. The tow truck drivers? They don't even blink. They've heard it all before. To them, Margaret is just background noise. And here's the delicious irony. Margaret had told her residents not to worry. She told them the business owner was bluffing. And now, they're paying hundreds of dollars in impound fees because they trusted her word. Can you imagine those conversations? But Margaret said it was fine. Yeah, well, Margaret doesn't run the tow yard, Karen. By the time the last car disappears, the HOA looks less like a community and more like a battlefield. Residents are fuming. Margaret is scrambling. And our business owner? He's finally breathing easy. The ultimatum wasn't just talk. It was action. And it worked. Now let's be clear. Towing isn't fun. Nobody likes losing their car, paying a ransom to get it back, or calling their boss to say, "I'm late because my HOA lied to me." But in this case, it was justice. Cold, efficient, mechanical justice delivered one hook at a time. And here's the kicker. The tow trucks didn't just remove cars. They removed Margaret's credibility. Because the minute those cars rolled away, residents realized the ugly truth. She had lied. There was no arrangement, no handshake deal, no magical permission slip, just Margaret's ego, and now their wallets were paying for it. But if you thought the tow truck parade was the grand finale, think again, because Margaret wasn't ready to give up her crown. No, she still had one last meltdown left in her, and it was so over the top you'd think she was auditioning for a daytime soap opera. Welcome to fact number 8, Margaret melts down.
If you thought watching 12 cars get yoinked out of a parking lot was peak HOA drama, think again. Because the best part of any HOA saga isn't the action, it's the meltdown. And Margaret Wilson, queen of Pinecrest Gardens, delivered one so spectacular it deserves its own Emmy. Picture the scene. Our business owner is back in his office, finally relaxed. The lot is quiet, the spaces are clear, employees are actually parked like civilized humans. He's probably humming to himself while sipping a celebratory latte. Then, boom, his office door flies open. No knock, no courtesy. Just pure HOA fury storming in like a Category 5 hurricane in heels. It's Margaret, red-faced, clutching a stack of papers that may or may not be real, and radiating the kind of rage only someone caught in a lie can muster. And she's not here to chat. She's here to blame. The first words out of her mouth? Not an apology. Not an acknowledgement that her residents were trespassing. No, she goes straight for the jugular. Do you have any idea what you've done? Oh, yes, Margaret, he does. He's restored his property to its rightful state and taught you that your HOA bylaws don't extend past your picket fences. But she's not interested in logic. She's interested in theater. She paces the office like she's delivering a closing argument in court, except her case is built entirely on emotional manipulation. She accuses him of ruining lives. One of our residents missed a critical doctor's appointment. Another couldn't get to her chemo session. Someone else had to cancel surgery because you had their car towed. Let's stop right there. Because if your medical treatment depends entirely on being able to illegally park in someone else's private lot, you don't have a medical crisis. You have a logistics crisis. And whose fault is that? Spoiler, not the guy who owns the asphalt. But Margaret doesn't care. She weaponizes sympathy like it's her final trump card. She paints herself as the voice of a suffering community and him as the heartless villain. In her version of the story, she's Mother Teresa and he's Cruella de Vil, except instead of puppies, he's kidnapping Lexuses. Our business owner listens, probably trying not to laugh in her face because the excuses are so absurd they almost sound like satire. Almost. But Margaret's dead serious. Her voice cracks. She throws in a few tears for dramatic effect because nothing says responsible HOA leadership like crying in a small business owner's office after you got caught trespassing. And when emotional manipulation doesn't land, she pivots back to threats. Remember her big "I'm on the city planning commission" flex? Yeah, that makes a comeback. She waves it around again, promising she'll make life miserable for him, that she has connections, that he's burned a bridge he'll regret. It's the HOA version of "Do you know who I am?" And if you've ever heard someone actually use that phrase, you know they're 2 seconds from losing. Here's the thing Margaret doesn't realize. Every word, every threat, every teary accusation is being watched. Not just by the business owner, but by other HOA board members. Yep, they're catching wind of this meltdown, and they're not impressed. Because nothing makes board members sweat like liability. And Margaret is basically waving a neon sign that says, "I am a liability." The meltdown drags on, a chaotic mix of blame, guilt trips, and power plays. But by the end,
Margaret has achieved the exact opposite of what she wanted. Instead of intimidating him, she's revealed just how unhinged she really is. And instead of rallying her board, she's giving them ammunition to take her down. So let's recap. 12 cars gone, residents furious, impound fees stacking up like HOA fines in July, and Margaret is sobbing in someone else's office, threatening political retribution while her board takes notes on her incompetence. If this were a reality show, this would be the scene where producers cut to a confessional interview and the other cast members say, "Yeah, her days are numbered." And speaking of numbered days, Margaret's meltdown was the beginning of the end. Because when the HOA board saw her spiral, they decided enough was enough. Which brings us to fact number 9, the HOA coup. Every tyrant eventually faces a reckoning. Napoleon had Waterloo, Caesar had Brutus, and Margaret Wilson, she had a board meeting. Not quite as glamorous, but trust me, the drama was just as bloody, metaphorically speaking. So here's how it goes down. After the meltdown of the century in the business owner's office, word starts spreading like wildfire. Residents are furious about their impound fees, whispering in the clubhouse about how Margaret swore everything was arranged. And worse, board members are catching wind of her planning commission threats, the kind of thing that sounds impressive at brunch but looks like a lawsuit waiting to happen when put on record. Because yes, someone recorded her. Remember that? The little detail where her whole tantrum about having connections got caught on tape? Turns out, that recording makes its way back to the board. And when they hear it, jaws drop. They don't hear a leader, they hear a liability. A woman threatening a local business owner with political power she doesn't actually have. Cue the board meeting. Picture it. Folding chairs, lukewarm coffee, stale donuts, and a dozen angry residents glaring daggers at Margaret from across the room. It's less community governance and more survivor tribal council. And Margaret? She's sitting there with the forced smile of someone who doesn't realize she's about to be voted off the island. The meeting starts normal enough. Budget updates, landscaping complaints, some guy whining about kids chalking on the sidewalks. But then, like a plot twist in a soap opera, one of the board members clears their throat and says, "We need to discuss recent parking issues." The room goes dead silent. Everyone knows what's coming. Residents start speaking up, one after another, like dominoes falling. Margaret said it was fine. Margaret told us there was an arrangement. Margaret promised no one would get towed. The words pile up like HOA fines in December. And Margaret, instead of owning it, tries to spin it again. She claims she was misunderstood. She claims it was a temporary solution. She even throws in a few lines about community spirit. But then comes the nail in the coffin, the recording. Someone plays it aloud, Margaret's voice echoing through the clubhouse. "I'm on the City Planning Commission. I can make life very difficult for him." Boom! Game over. The residents gasp. The board members exchange looks. You don't need a law degree to know that sounds shady. It's not just an empty threat. It's a potential ethics violation. Margaret's little power trip has now become a liability big enough to sink the entire HOA if someone decides to sue. At this point, the board has no choice. They call a vote of no confidence. And Margaret, who once ruled with an iron fist and designer handbag, is suddenly outnumbered. The very people who used to nod and clap at her speeches are now raising their hands to strip her of power. The motion passes. Just like that, Margaret is dethroned. She's no longer the queen of Pinecrest Gardens. She's just another resident, one whose reputation is shredded and whose neighbors won't even make eye contact at the mailbox anymore. And here's the best part. The board doesn't stop at removing her as president. They also launch an internal review of her other arrangements. Remember those landscaping contracts she funneled to her brother's company? The shady deals with neighborhood vendors? Yeah, all of that comes bubbling to the surface. Turns out, The parking lot stunt wasn't her only skeleton in the closet. It was just the one big enough to topple the whole closet over. At the end of the meeting, Margaret isn't just out of power. She's humiliated. Her lies exposed, her threats recorded, her empire crumbled. And the business owner? He's vindicated. His lot is finally safe, and the HOA that once tried to bully him has turned inward, eating its own leadership. So let's recap Fact 9. Margaret thought she was untouchable. She thought her title, her lies, and her bluster would keep her safe. But in the end, it wasn't a lawsuit, or a tow truck, or even the business owner that took her down. It was her own board, the very people she thought she controlled. And if you think losing her HOA crown was bad, wait until you hear what happened next. Because Margaret's downfall didn't stop at Pinecrest Gardens. It spilled over into her shiny government gig, her reputation, and pretty much every ounce of credibility she had left. Welcome to fact number 10. Margaret loses it all.
Every great downfall has its final act. For some, it's exile. For others, it's prison. For Margaret Wilson, it was the sweet sound of doors slamming shut on every bit of power she ever thought she had. The HOA coup might have stripped her crown, but this was the part where karma sent her the bill, interest included. See, Margaret didn't just lose her HOA presidency that night. Nope. Her meltdown, her lies, her frets, all of it leaked beyond Pinecrest Gardens. Word got out to the City Planning Commission, where she loved to throw around her influence. And guess what? They don't take kindly to their members using city titles as personal batons to smack down local business owners. Within weeks, the Ethics Committee had her under review. That recording of her promising to make life very difficult wasn't just bad optics, it was a smoking gun. Suddenly, Margaret's cushy little seat on the commission looked a lot less secure. And then came the resignations. Forced, of course, but she spun it as stepping down to focus on family. Please, that's political code for I got caught and they shoved me out before the newspapers had a field day. Speaking of newspapers, the local press pounced like cats on tuna. Headlines read, HOA president resigns amid parking scandal. Articles recounted the saga, the fake agreement, the illegal parking free-for-all, the dramatic towing showdown. Margaret's name was everywhere, but not in the way she liked. She'd built her identity on being seen as powerful and competent. Now, she was the punchline of every HOA horror story for miles. And it didn't stop there. Residents she once commanded with smug authority now saw her as toxic. The same people who once rushed to obey her rules wouldn't even look her in the eye. Walking her dog past the clubhouse? Awkward silence. Checking her mailbox? Cold stares. Margaret went from queen bee to social pariah in record time. And meanwhile, her personal life took a hit too. Remember those shady landscaping deals she funneled to her brother's company? Once the board dug into that, contracts got canceled. Her brother lost work. Family dinners suddenly got very tense. She didn't just lose her HOA gig, she dragged her family business down with her. And our business owner? He didn't just win, he thrived. With his lot finally protected, his employees parked stress-free, clients came back, and the business grew stronger than ever. In fact, he became something of a local legend. Other business owners started reaching out, thanking him for standing up to the HOA, even asking for advice on how to fight back against overreaching neighborhood dictators. He wasn't just a web design guy anymore. He was a hero of the asphalt resistance. Now let's pause and savor the irony here. Margaret thought she was untouchable because of her HOA title and her planning commission badge. She used those positions to bully, manipulate, and lie. But in the end, those same positions became the very things that destroyed her. Her HOA ousted her. Her commission forced her out. Her reputation tanked. She lost her power, her influence, her credibility, everything. And she didn't lose it because of some big, complicated scheme. She lost it because she lied about a parking lot. A parking lot! Let that sink in. Years of fake authority undone by asphalt and tow trucks. If Shakespeare were alive today, he'd be writing The Tragedy of Margaret Wilson, Queen of HOA, slain by the great tow truck of destiny. So let's recap fact 10. Margaret's lies caught up with her. The HOA threw her out. The Planning Commission dropped her. Her reputation tanked, and her little empire collapsed into rubble. Meanwhile, the business owner walked away with his property intact, his business thriving, and his head held high. Margaret, she walked away with nothing but a permanent spot in the HOA Hall of Shame. And that, my friends, is how one silver Lexus set off a chain reaction that ended an entire HOA presidency, dismantled a political career, and restored justice to one very patient business owner's parking lot. But the moral of the story, that's the cherry on top. Let's wrap this up.